The night my father told me he was leaving my mother's orchard to my cousin, my dog dropped a white pill at my feet. The label on Dad's prescription bottle said every tablet inside should be blue. By the next afternoon, Scout would be missing, and my cousin would be pretending neither of us had seen anything. At the time, all I knew was that my father had summoned me home to northern Michigan with a threat. "Come get your mother's boxes," Grant Lawson had said over the phone. "Anything still in the house after harvest weekend goes to Goodwill." He didn't ask whether I could take time off. He never had. I left Chicago before dawn on Friday and reached Lawson Ridge Orchard a little after noon. Scout, my border collie, stood with his front paws on the passenger door as we turned between rows of cherry trees. My mother had planted the oldest rose. My father had put only his name on the sign. "Lawson Ridge," it said in white letters across the red cider barn. Beneath it hung a new banner, "Legacy Weekend," honoring the next generation. Evan's silver pickup was parked in front of the farmhouse. It still had temporary plates. My car was a 6-year-old Subaru with a cracked cup holder and 200,000 miles on it. Dad had once told me adulthood meant paying for my own choices. Apparently that lesson had not applied to his brother's son. Evan came through the screen door before I reached the porch. Look who remembered the way home. He was 30, 2 years younger than me, but he wore my father's company vest and carried the ring of orchard keys on his belt. Behind him stood his fiancée, Olivia Price, in bare feet and a silk robe I recognized. My mother's robe. It was pale green, with a stitched hummingbird on the pocket. "That's not yours," I said. Olivia looked down as if the robe had dressed her without permission. "Grant said I could use anything in the guest room." "It isn't a guest room." Evan stepped between us. He smiled whenever he wanted an audience to think he was being patient. "You haven't slept here in 9 years, Mara." Scout moved against my leg. Evan glanced at him with the same irritation he had shown when we were kids, and Scout's predecessor used to follow my mother through the packing shed. "Dog stays outside. Scout stays with me. This is a food business. This is a house." Dad's voice came from the kitchen. "For God's sake, Mara, you made it 30 seconds. He looked smaller than he had at Christmas. His cheeks had hollowed, and the skin beneath his eyes had the gray tint my mother used to watch for after his heart surgery. But his voice was still built to fill a room. Evan crossed to him at once and took the coffee mug from his hand. "No caffeine after lunch, Uncle Grant." Dad gave him an indulgent smile. "See?" he said to me. "Somebody listens." And the boxes from my old room had been stacked in the upstairs hall. My clothes, college notebooks, and Mother's sewing tin had been packed together as if they belonged to the same dead girl. Olivia's makeup covered my dresser. A garment bag labeled bridal fitting hung from the closet door. The hummingbird quilt my mother made during chemo was folded at the foot of the bed. "She washed it," Evan said from behind me. "Before you start," I turned. "Get out of my room. Dad said we could have it. Your dad doesn't own this house. Not yet." He said it lightly, but he watched me absorb it. Downstairs, Dad called everyone to the kitchen table. His younger brother, Dale, arrived smelling like gasoline and stale beer. He kissed Olivia's cheek, clapped Evan on the shoulder, and sat in my mother's chair. Dad poured hard cider into 4 glasses. I covered his with my hand. "Your cardiologist said 1 drink a week. Evan handles my medication now," as if that answered me. Evan lifted a plastic organizer from the counter. Each compartment had a day printed on it. Dad's mechanical heart valve required an anticoagulant every evening. My mother used to record his dose and blood test result on a calendar because the amount changed. "His numbers have been great," Evan said. Dad drank. He waited until Dale had raised a second toast before announcing why I had really been called home. "I amended the family trust," he said. "Evan gets the house, the orchard, the cider company. Everything stays together." The room did not spin. It became very still. My mother had worked the packing line while pregnant with me. She had driven fruit to market with a chemotherapy port taped beneath her shirt. Half the land had come from her parents. Dad looked almost pleased by my silence. You have your life in Chicago, Evan stayed. You left him everything because he lives 12 minutes away? I left it to the person who'll keep the Lawson name over the door. My last name is Lawson. Dale laughed into his glass. Olivia studied the table. Dad waved a hand. You know what I mean. I did. He meant a son, even if he had to borrow his brother's. Then he offered me a consolation prize. I could quit my job, move home, and clean up the company books. Evan would run operations. Dad said families shouldn't nickel and dime family over salary while there was work to be done. I investigated fraudulent insurance claims for a living. I interviewed contractors, traced invoices, and found the gap between what people said and what the records allowed. Dad wanted that skill for free. He wanted Evan to own it. No, I said. Dad slapped his palm against the table. The glasses jumped. Your mother knew how to sacrifice for a family. My mother died believing this place would be mine too. His face hardened. Your mother died worried you'd turn every kindness into an invoice. That was a lie. It was also cruel enough to tell me he had been saving it. I stood. Scout rose with me. Evan caught my wrist. Don't make another scene. I looked at his hand until he released me. Dad reached for his evening pills. Evan tipped 3 tablets from the organizer into his palm and closed Dad's fingers around them. 1 tablet fell and skittered beneath the table. Scout moved faster than Evan. He put a paw over it, then picked it up without swallowing. He had been trained to retrieve dropped objects. When he placed the pill against my shoe, I wrapped it in a napkin. Evan crouched beside me. Give me that. I picked up the prescription bottle from the counter instead. The label identified Dad's anticoagulant by shape and color. Blue, oval. The tablets visible through the amber plastic were blue. The pill in my napkin was round and white.
What is this?
I asked. Evan took the bottle from my hand. One of his vitamins. You put vitamins in the same organizer? I put in what his doctor told me to. Which doctor? The one who's been here while you were busy billing strangers for your concern. Dad laughed at that. Dale did too. Evan held out his hand for the pill. I folded the napkin and slipped it into my pocket. For the first time all afternoon, his smile disappeared. I photographed the pill in my room beside a quarter, then sealed it in an empty prescription vial from my travel bag. I wrote the date, time, and where Scout had found it on a strip of painter's tape. It wasn't evidence a prosecutor could build a case around. Too many people had been near it. I couldn't prove where it came from or what it contained, but a weak lead was still a lead. At 2 a.m, Scout lifted his head from the rug. Someone was moving downstairs. I had bought a small action camera for our trail runs along Lake Michigan. Its plastic clip fastened beneath Scout's black chest harness, almost invisible in his fur. I turned it on. Find Grandpa, I whispered. Scout knew the game. He nudged my door open and slipped into the hall. I followed as far as the landing. Evan sat at the kitchen island with Dad's pill organizer open in front of him. Beside it stood 2 bottles and a paper pharmacy bag. He looked toward the stairs, then began pushing tablets from one bottle into the compartments. Scout padded closer. From above, I could see only Evan's shoulders. The camera would have the lower angle. Scout's tags tapped the cabinet. Evan spun around. His elbow struck the organizer, scattering pills over the floor. Damn dog. He swept up the 2 bottles. Scout barked once. Evan raised his foot. Try it, I said from the stairs. He froze. What are you doing up? Watching you kick a dog because he saw you with a pill bottle. I was fixing Uncle Grant's doses. He forgot Tuesday. It was Friday. I walked into the kitchen, but Evan had already shoved the bottles into the pharmacy bag. Let me see them. No. Then wake Dad up. You want to upset a heart patient at 2 a.m? He looked down at Scout, and something in his expression changed. His eyes followed the black harness strap beneath the dog's chest. I called Scout back. Evan smiled again, but this one arrived too late. At breakfast, Dad said I was no longer welcome at the farmhouse. Evan had told him I accused them both of trying to poison him. I had used the word switch. Evan supplied poison because it made me sound unhinged. You come up here twice a year, Dad said, and suddenly you're the expert on my body. Show me the white pill.
What white pill?
Exactly. He pointed toward the porch. Take your boxes and go after the legacy lunch. I should have left then. I stayed because 300 people were coming to the orchard, and Dad looked as if the walk from the kitchen to the barn had exhausted him. The legacy lunch was an expensive way for my father to tell the county he had chosen a son. A local radio host introduced Evan as the future president of Lawson Ridge. Dad handed him the ceremonial keys to the cider barn, while employees applauded because they were being paid to. I stood behind the last row of folding chairs with Scout. My father praised Evan for loyalty. He did not mention my mother once. After the speech, Dale found me near the loading dock. You made your point, he said. Don't ruin this for your dad. What point? Big city job. Big city car. You're better than everybody. I looked past him at Evan, who was pouring cider for a county commissioner with one hand and keeping the other around Dad's shoulders. Did Evan ask you to talk to me? Dale's eyes moved to Scout's harness. That animal shouldn't be around food. He walked away before I could answer. 20 minutes later, Scout was gone. His leash had been tied to a post beside the farm office while I carried a box to my car. The leash remained. The brass clip had been opened, not broken. I called his name until my throat hurt. Evan appeared with Olivia and 2 guests. Lose something? Where is he? Maybe he got tired of waiting for you to leave. I grabbed the front of his company vest. Dad shoved between us. His palm struck my cheek hard enough to turn my head. The closest guests went quiet. Evan took half a step behind him, watching me with the corner of his mouth lifted. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my lip. Someone took Scout. No one wants your damn dog. I pulled out my phone and opened the tracker app. Scout's collar was moving east on Highway 72. Dale does. Dad looked at the screen, then at me. For 1 second, I thought he understood. Then he said, if Dale moved him, he had a reason. If Scout is hurt, I will put every person involved in front of a judge. I let go of Evan. The tracker stopped 12 miles away at a gas station near Williamsburg. A minute later it began moving again. Then, the signal vanished. I called the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office from my car. As I gave the dispatcher Dale's name and truck description, Evan leaned down to my open window. You call the police on my father. Don't bother coming back. You mean your father? I said. The one who stayed? His jaw tightened. I drove toward the last signal. In my mirror, my father stood beneath the banner celebrating his legacy, one hand pressed to his chest and the other resting on Evan's shoulder. The tracker lay beneath a dumpster behind the gas station. Scout's collar had been cut through the nylon. A cashier remembered Dale because he had bought beer with a muddy dog barking in his truck. She said he headed east toward Kalkaska. There were hundreds of square miles of forest east of us. The deputy who met me took the collar and made a report. He called Dale twice. Both calls went to voicemail. We'll send the truck information out, he said. If you know anywhere he hunts or owns property, make a list. The old deer camp came back to me so hard I could smell its iron stove. My mother used to take me there when Dad and Dale fought. It was a one-room cabin on leased timberland near Bear Lake, reached by an unmarked 2-track. The brothers had stopped using it after a storm dropped a spruce through the roof. I gave the deputy the location. Then I called the only person I knew with both a 4-wheel drive vehicle and emergency veterinary supplies. Ben Harper answered on the second ring. Mara? We had not spoken in 3 years. I had not told him I was home. Someone took Scout. 20 minutes later, his mud-splashed veterinary truck pulled into the gas station. Ben got out wearing green scrubs beneath a canvas jacket. His hair had more gray at the temples than I remembered. He didn't ask why I had called him instead of any of the people I saw at Christmas. He looked at the cut collar in the deputy's evidence bag and said, "Tell me where we're going." The patrol SUV went first. Ben drove behind it, and I sat with both hands locked around my phone. "Grant still letting Evan run the place?" he asked. "Grant is giving him the place." Ben glanced at me. I didn't know. Most people at the party did. I stopped going to Lawson Ridge parties. "Why?" "Your father introduced me as the vet who couldn't keep his daughter in town." Despite everything, a sound escaped me that was almost a laugh. The deputy missed the turn. I recognized a split birch where the county road narrowed and directed us back. The two-track was half swallowed by bracken. Branches scraped the truck. At the end stood a cabin with blue tarp sagging across the roof. Dale's tire tracks ended beside it. The door was secured from the outside with a length of chain. I heard one scratch from within. "Scout!" The sound that answered was weak and frantic. The deputy cut the chain. I pushed past him when the door opened. Scout lay beneath a broken window. Blood darkened the fur along the left side of his face. A water bowl sat near the wall, empty. There was no food. His tail struck the floor once when he saw me. I dropped beside him. "Hey, Bug, I've got you." Ben knelt across from me. The calm in his voice was practiced, not effortless. "Don't lift him yet. Let me check his neck." Glass had cut Scout's face when he tried to force his way through the boarded window. His pulse was fast. His gums were pale. Ben covered the injured eye, started fluids in the truck, and called his clinic to prepare for surgery. As we moved Scout onto a blanket, the deputy pointed beneath his chest. "Is that yours?" The action camera still clung to the harness. Its casing was cracked. The red light was off. I removed it with shaking fingers and handed it directly to the deputy. "It may show who took him," I said. "It may show something else, too." Ben rode in the back with Scout. I sat beside them while the deputy drove us out in Ben's truck. My car remained near the cabin. Halfway to Traverse City, Scout stopped breathing. Ben bent over him. The truck filled with the rip of packaging and the short commands he relayed to the clinic. I pressed myself against the door so he had room to work. "Come on," he said to Scout. "You didn't break out of a cabin to quit in my truck." Scout coughed. Air moved again. At North Bay Animal Hospital, they took him through double doors without me. Ben came out 90 minutes later. There was blood on one sleeve. "He's alive." My legs gave way against the plastic waiting room chair. The eye? Ben sat across from me. I couldn't save it. I covered my face. He waited until I could breathe before he continued. "The rest of him has a chance. A good one, if infection stays under control." The deputy returned with a laptop and an evidence envelope. A technician at the sheriff's office had copied the camera card before the corrosion spread. "You need to see this," he said. He played the clip from 2:14 that morning. The view tilted as Scout descended the stairs. Evan came into frame at the kitchen island. On camera, both bottles were clear. One bore Dad's pharmacy label. Evan emptied its blue pills into a plastic bag. From the second bottle, he poured round white tablets into Dad's weekly organizer. Then he used a paper towel to wipe the pharmacy bottle and replaced the blue pills inside it. He was not organizing Dad's medication. He was building a display. The bottle would look correct. The pills Dad actually swallowed would not be. Scout's tags clicked. Evan knocked the organizer to the floor and turned toward him. For 2 seconds, his face filled the screen. His eyes dropped to the camera. "What the hell is that?" The clip jolted as I called from the stairs. Before it ended, Evan whispered one sentence. "You should have stayed out of it." I had thought he was speaking to the dog. Watching his eyes track toward the staircase, I wasn't sure anymore. The deputy who had followed us to the cabin was Lena Ortiz, a detective with the sheriff's office. By 4 that afternoon, she had the original memory card, the white tablet Scout found, and my written timeline. She did not call any of it proof of murder. "The video shows your cousin replacing medication," Ortiz said. It doesn't tell us what the replacement is, whether your father swallowed it, or what Evan intended. He hid my father's real pills. I agree that it looks bad. It looks bad? Ortiz closed her notebook. My job is to find the part that still looks bad after his attorney explains it. I had said the same thing to angry policyholders in different words. I hated hearing it now. She asked the hospital to identify the white tablet and requested a welfare check on Dad. A second deputy drove to the orchard. Dad refused to let either of them inside. Evan told them I was a disgruntled daughter trying to derail a valid trust. At 6:30, Dad collapsed in the cider barn. Olivia called 911. Evan called 3 board members before he called me. By the time I reached Munson Medical Center, Dad had suffered a major stroke. A clot had formed near his mechanical valve and traveled to his brain. His blood work showed almost none of the anticoagulant protection his doctors expected. That fact concerned the neurologist. It did not tell her whether Dad had missed doses, absorbed them poorly, or been given something else. Suspicion was not a toxicology report. Evan stood outside the intensive care unit with my father's keys still on his belt. "You did this," he said. "Move. You come home, call cops on the family, and his heart goes crazy." A stroke is not caused by an uncomfortable conversation. "He was fine before you showed up. His last blood test was 6 weeks ago. Why?" The question hit. His mouth opened, then closed. Dad's anticoagulation clinic had wanted weekly tests until his dose stabilized. My mother had never allowed him to miss one. I stepped closer. "Did you cancel them?" He hated going. "That isn't an answer. I was the one taking care of him." He wasn't claiming he had done the right thing. He was claiming that being close gave him the right to decide for everybody else. The neurologist let me see Dad shortly before midnight. One side of his face had fallen slack. Machines kept a cold rhythm around him. He was awake. I sat beside the bed and told him what Scout's camera had recorded. "Evan removed your blue pills. The white one is being tested. Police have the video." Dad struggled to speak. I leaned closer. 2 words came out. "You planned." At first I thought he meant Evan. Then his working hand pushed weakly against my arm. "You planned this," I repeated. He blinked once. "Yes." Even now, he believed I had manufactured an attempted murder to steal back property built by my mother. "Did you sign the trust amendment because Evan asked you to?" His monitor quickened. "Mara," the nurse warned. Dad's fingers found the call button. He pressed until the nurse came to make me leave. I stopped at the door. "Mom begged you to have your blood checked," I said. "You listened when Evan told you not to. That was your choice. I did not forgive him." I did not tell him I loved him because a hospital room had made honesty impolite. I told him the only thing I still had to give. "I am trying to keep you alive." He turned his face toward the wall. Dad died the following afternoon. The county medical examiner accepted jurisdiction because law enforcement had reported suspected medication tampering. The death certificate remained pending. The body went for autopsy, and samples went to a forensic laboratory. Nothing was immediate except Evan's performance. He cried in the hallway. He let nurses hold him up. When the funeral director asked who had authority to make arrangements, Evan produced a copy of the trust amendment from his phone. Ortiz took him into a consultation room for an interview. He left 40 minutes later. "Why isn't he in handcuffs?" I asked her. "Because I don't arrest people for being convincing villains in videos," she said. "I arrest them when I can prove a crime." "How long?" "Longer than you want." Ben called before I could answer. Scout had woken after surgery. I drove across town to the animal hospital. Scout lay beneath a warming blanket with one side of his head bandaged. When I touched his paw, his remaining eye opened, his tail moved. The movement was weak, but it was enough to pull me across the room. I put my forehead against his. "You stayed," I whispered. Unlike the men in my family, Scout had never used that word to ask for a reward. My father's funeral filled the cider barn. Evan said Dad would have wanted it there. What he meant was that he wanted every employee, grower, lender, and county official to see him standing beneath the Lawson Ridge sign. He wore Dad's Navy suit and gave the eulogy. Grant taught me that family is the person who stays when the work gets hard. People turned toward me without turning their heads. Evan thanked my father for treating him like a son. He described future plans for the orchard, including a new lakefront tasting room. The casket had not yet left the building, and he was already giving an investor presentation. I sat in the front row with an empty chair on either side. Ben was caring for Scout. Dale had been arrested that morning after Detective Ortiz found the text Evan sent during the legacy lunch. Take him to the old camp. Lose the collar. Dale claimed he thought Scout would be there for only a few hours. The empty water bowl and chain outside the door told a different version. The county prosecutor was reviewing larceny and animal cruelty charges. After the funeral, Evan cornered me in the packing room. You happy now? Workers moved crates beyond the swinging door. He kept his voice low. About what? My dad's in jail. Grant is dead. You're still not getting this place. He held up a certified copy of the trust amendment. North Coast Trust Company is successor trustee. They already know I'm the sole beneficiary. Congratulations! My calm made him suspicious. You always thought you were smarter than everybody. Not everybody. You left. I stayed. You don't get to come back and count what it cost. He folded the amendment and tucked it inside his jacket. Be out of the farmhouse by Sunday. I left that afternoon. Then I hired Priya Shah. Priya practiced probate litigation from a narrow office above a bakery in downtown Traverse City. She read the trust twice before she spoke. Your father was allowed to disinherit you, she said. I know. You'd be surprised how many people don't. The original trust left Lawson Ridge and the farmhouse to me. The amendment, signed 11 days before Dad called me home, replaced me with Evan, and directed North Coast to transfer Dad's company interests to him. The wording was clear enough. The 11 days surrounding the signature were a mess. Michigan lets an interested person contest a revocable trust after the settler dies, Priya said. Fraud, duress, and undue influence can invalidate a change. If Evan intentionally caused Grant's death, the law also prevents him from taking a benefit because of it. After a conviction? A conviction can decide it. In an intentional killing claim, probate court may also make its own determination under a lower civil standard. But we are not waiting for the criminal case to solve the trust case. She sent North Coast written notice that afternoon. The company could not safely distribute the orchard while a formal contest was pending. Evan learned about the hold within an hour. His first voicemail said I was pathetic. His fourth offered me $20,000 to withdraw. His seventh reminded me that Dad died hating me. Priya saved every message. He talks when he's frightened, she said. He talks when he's awake. That earned the smallest edge of a smile. We filed a petition challenging the amendment and asked the probate court to appoint a neutral special fiduciary to preserve the company records while ownership was disputed. North Coast supported the request. The judge granted limited authority for an independent accountant to secure the books, devices, and storage facilities belonging to the orchard. Evan was ordered not to sell, borrow against, or transfer trust property. He responded by announcing a party. 6 weeks after Dad's funeral, Lawson Ridge would host Legacy Night. Evan and Olivia would celebrate their engagement, reveal the tasting room design, and introduce him as president. He could not legally distribute the trust to himself, but he could still print his name on a banner. The white pill was vitamin D. That result should have made the case simpler. Instead, Ortiz explained why it didn't. Vitamin D didn't kill your father, she said. The missing anticoagulant did. Probably. We still have to prove he missed enough doses, that Evan caused it, and that Evan intended the result. The camera proved one switch on one night. Dad was dead because of a pattern. For the next month, I built the pattern. The probate court's special fiduciary gave the independent accountant access to Lawson Ridge's records. With Priya's approval, I reviewed copies in the accountant's office. I was not allowed to remove or alter anything. I did what I did at work. I stopped looking for a confession and looked for a clock. Dad's clinic records showed stable blood tests until mid-June, when Evan began managing his appointments. 3 weekly tests were canceled through the patient portal. Each cancellation came from an internet address assigned to the Orchard office. Dad's pharmacy continued filling the correct medication. Security video showed Evan collecting it. The blue pills were purchased. They simply did not reach my father. At first, the company books offered nothing but ordinary mess. Fuel invoices had been coded as repairs. Evan had bought steak dinners under grower relations. Dad had paid for the silver pickup through an equipment account. Then I found a monthly charge for bay lock storage. Lawson Ridge did not use storage units. It had 6 barns. The first payment appeared 2 days after Evan canceled Dad's first blood test. I flagged it for the accountant, Priya, and Ortiz. Ortiz requested the records. The unit was rented in Evan's name, but paid with the Orchard card. Gate logs placed him there on each pharmacy pickup date. She used that information, the camera clip, and the tablet result to seek a search warrant. While we waited, the medical examiner called. Dad had died from a clot associated with his mechanical valve. Forensic testing did not find his prescribed anticoagulant at a therapeutic level. His other daily medications were present. Someone had singled out the drug that kept clots from forming. The manner of death changed from pending to homicide. I sat in my parked car outside Priya's office after the call. Tourists crossed Front Street carrying ice cream and shopping bags. A delivery truck blocked traffic. Normal life kept making noise. For 6 weeks I had wanted one official sentence. Hearing it did not feel like winning. It meant my father had chosen Evan over me until Evan's choice killed him. Ben called to say Scout had learned to catch a soft ball from his blind side. "He's cheating," Ben said. "He listens for the bounce." I looked down the street until the traffic light blurred. "Then it isn't cheating." Ben was quiet. "How are you?" The medical examiner ruled it a homicide. "I'm sorry. I had heard condolences from 30 people at the funeral." Ben was the first who did not assume I was grieving only my father. "Scout can come home Monday," he said. "If you have somewhere you both feel safe." I rented a cottage near the bay. The search of bay lock storage happened on Tuesday. Ortiz did not tell me everything they found. She confirmed 3 things. The unit contained bags of Dad's blue pills, still labeled by fill date. It contained my mother's jewelry, and 2 boxes Evan had removed from my room. And it contained loan documents showing Evan owed more than $300,000 on a failed sports bar outside Petoskey. The balance came due 10 days after Dad signed the amendment. "Is that enough?" I asked. "It's enough for more warrants. Still not an arrest." Evan had an explanation for every separate fact. Dad hated the medication. Dad gave him the jewelry. Dad wanted to rescue him from debt. The pills in storage were being kept in case Dad changed his mind. Ridiculous was not the same as impossible. Then Dale asked for a deal. His attorney gave Ortiz the full message thread, not only the line about Scout. 20 minutes before the theft, Dale had texted, "Why does the dog have a camera?" Evan replied, "Because Mara doesn't know when to stop. Get rid of both before she watches it." Dale had answered, "You owe me." Evan's final message read, "When the trust pays, everybody gets paid." Priya read the exchange twice. He's still going to say he meant the camera and the dog, not Grant. I know. We need the trust file. The attorney who prepared Dad's original estate plan had refused to draft the amendment. Her notes said Dad appeared disoriented during a video call and repeatedly asked Evan whether he had given the correct answer. 2 days later, Evan downloaded a form and hired a mobile notary. Olivia booked the appointment from her phone. She and a tasting room contractor served as witnesses. The contractor had already told Priya's investigator that Evan stood behind Dad during the signing and prompted him whenever he hesitated. Olivia refused to speak to us. Evan's plan no longer looked like a collection of ugly accidents. Every part drove the next. He isolated Dad from the clinic, replaced the medicine, secured the amendment, and hid the real pills. When Scout recorded him, he tried to remove the witness. All of it pointed toward the night he expected the county to call him president. Evan called me 3 days before Legacy Night. He had stopped leaving threats on voicemail. Priya's notice and North Coast's hold had taught him to sound reasonable. "We should settle," he said. "You offered $20,000 for a company valued at $8 million, for a claim Dad would have laughed at." Scout slept beside my chair in the Bay cottage. The fur around his missing eye had begun to grow back. "Then you don't need my signature," I said. Silence. The lakefront tasting room lender would not release construction funds while the trust was contested. Evan's personal lender had also learned he did not yet own Lawson Ridge. Both wanted proof the dispute was over. He needed me to stop being a daughter long enough to become a clean signature. "What do you want?" he asked. "Mom's jewelry." "Every box you took. $75,000. You'd walk away? Send Priya a written offer. If the property is returned and the terms are real, I'll review a release." I did not promise to sign. Evan heard what desperation told him to hear. He suggested we execute the agreement at Legacy Night so the bank, lenders, and board could witness the family putting its differences aside. "Dad always said private grudges shouldn't damage the business," he added. Dad had conducted every humiliation in public and called every consequence private. "Have the papers ready?" I said. After we hung up, Priya looked at me across her desk. "He thinks you're surrendering. He thinks money is the only reason anyone resists him." Ortiz had obtained warrants for Evan's laptop, phone backups, and financial accounts. She told me not to expect an arrest on my schedule. I didn't. My schedule concerned the story Evan was selling. On Legacy Night, in front of the employees whose jobs he had risked and the lenders whose money he had courted, he was going to call himself the rightful heir. The answer would already be in the room. Lawson Ridge had never looked more expensive. Lights hung between the cherry trees. A rented stage covered the cider barn loading dock. Waiters circulated with glasses from a limited batch labeled Founder's Reserve, my mother's recipe. Evan's portrait appeared on every bottle. Across the stage, a banner read, "Evan Lawson, President. The legacy continues." Priya arrived beside me in a dark blue suit, carrying one slim folder. I carried nothing. Scout remained at the cottage with Ben. Evan had already tried to erase one witness. I would not give him another chance. Olivia intercepted me near the packing room. Her engagement ring was bright enough to catch the string lights. "You're actually signing?" she asked. "Did you guarantee Evan's sports bar loan?" Her face changed. "What?" "Your name is on a personal guarantee for $312,000. I've never been to that bank." "Then ask him why your signature is in his storage unit." She looked toward the stage, where Evan was shaking hands with a lender. "You're lying. I brought the document number. Priya can show your attorney how to request a copy." Olivia did not ask Priya. She took out her phone and walked away. At 8, Evan climbed onto the stage. He thanked the growers, the board, and the men who had taught him that work was a form of love. He thanked Olivia for believing in the future he was building. Then he thanked my father. "Grant Lawson knew an inheritance isn't a prize for sharing someone's blood," he said. "It's a responsibility given to the person who stays." Applause rolled through the barn. He found me in the crowd. "Mara and I have had our differences. Tonight, she has agreed to honor Grant's final wishes and end the lawsuit dividing our family." That was not what I had agreed to. It was exactly what I expected him to say. An event coordinator guided me onto the stage. A table waited beneath the banner, with 2 copies of a settlement agreement and a gold pen. Evan held out his hand. I took the microphone instead. "My cousin is right about one thing. An inheritance is not a prize for sharing someone's blood." His smile tightened. "My father had every legal right to leave me nothing. If he had made that decision freely, I would have had to live with it." The barn quieted. 6 weeks before he called me home, Evan began canceling the blood tests that kept Dad's heart medication safe. 13 days before the call, an estate lawyer refused to change the trust because Dad could not answer her questions without Evan's help. Evan reached for the microphone. Priya stepped between us. I continued. Evan found a notary who did not ask enough questions. Then he picked up Dad's anticoagulant every week, hid it in a storage unit, and filled Dad's organizer with vitamins. Someone near the bar set down a glass too hard. Evan laughed. This is why Dad cut her out. She turns every family problem into an investigation. Scout's camera recorded you switching the pills. The laughter ended. I did not play the video. It belonged in 2 courtrooms, not on a party screen. I did not need to display my father's death for strangers to believe me. Evan looked toward the exits. You left, he said. I was the one who stayed. I took him to appointments. I fed him. I kept this place running while you counted receipts in Chicago. The words were almost identical to the ones he had used in the packing room after the funeral. This time, the entire room heard my answer. You did stay, Evan. Close enough to cancel his appointments. Close enough to count his pills. Close enough to turn his trust into your loan application. I set the unsigned release on the table. You didn't become his son. You became the chain of evidence. Priya opened her folder. The amended trust contest, supported by the medical examiner's homicide finding and the newly recovered records, had been filed that morning. A process server walked to the foot of the stage and handed Evan the court papers. Priya addressed the lenders and board members rather than him. North Coast has confirmed that no trust property will be distributed while the contest is pending. Mr. Lawson has no authority to sell, pledge, or borrow against Lawson Ridge. The lakefront lender left first. 2 board members followed. Evan tore the first page of the petition in half. It's paper. The trust has Grant's signature. So does this. Olivia had returned. She stood below the stage with the loan guarantee open on her phone. You forged my name. Evan stared at her. Liv, not now. You told me the sports bar was paid off. I did it for us. You did it because no bank would lend you another $1. She pulled off the engagement ring and placed it beside the unsigned settlement. The notary appointment is on my phone, she said. So are the messages where you told me what to say if anyone asked whether Grant understood? Evan's eyes moved around the barn. His father was not there to obey him. His fiancée had stepped away. The lenders would not meet his gaze. Behind the bar, employees had begun removing bottles with his portrait. For the first time, staying had left him alone. Detective Ortiz entered through the loading doors with 2 other officers. She had not come because of my speech. The search of Evan's phone backup had recovered a deleted query from the night before the trust amendment. How long without blood thinner mechanical valve stroke? It had also recovered a message he sent Olivia after Dad collapsed. If he wakes up, don't let Mara get him alone. He can still change it. Ortiz climbed onto the stage. Evan Lawson, we have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the death of Grant Lawson. Evan backed into the table. The gold pen rolled off and struck the floor. This is her doing. No one answered. He looked at me. Dad chose me. He did, I said. And you killed him before he could learn what that choice cost. Ortiz cuffed him beneath the banner, naming him president. As she led him through the barn, workers pulled one corner loose. His printed name folded in half before the doors closed behind him. The criminal case took 14 months. There were hearings, expert reports, motions over the dog camera footage, and weeks when nothing happened where I could see it. Olivia gave investigators her phone. Her messages showed that Evan had begun talking about Dad's death as a deadline months before it happened. Dale admitted Evan paid him to remove Scout and destroy the camera. In exchange for his testimony, Dale pleaded guilty to stealing the dog and to an animal cruelty charge. The judge imposed jail time, probation, and restitution for Scout's veterinary care. Evan went to trial. His lawyer argued that Dad stopped taking the anticoagulant by choice. He described Evan's searches as the panic of an overwhelmed caregiver. He called the storage unit an attempt to prevent a stubborn man from dosing himself incorrectly. Then, the prosecutor played Scout's recording. The jury watched Evan fill the organizer with white tablets and restore the blue pills to the pharmacy bottle so no visitor would notice. They heard him say, "You should have stayed out of it." They saw the date on the trust amendment. They saw the canceled clinic tests, the debt deadline, the hidden medication, and the message about preventing me from speaking to Dad alone. The jury convicted him of second-degree murder. Probate court did not need to wait any longer. The judge found that Evan had controlled Dad's medical access, isolated him from contrary advice, directed the amendment process, and stood to solve an immediate financial crisis through the change. The amendment was void for undue influence. The criminal conviction created a second barrier. Evan could not inherit from the man he had intentionally killed. The earlier trust controlled. Lawson Ridge passed to me. Evan had expected prison to be a temporary wall between him and $8 million. The final probate order removed the dollars from the other side. I did not visit him. I did not need to watch him learn what the order meant. His lawyers delivered it. The county newspapers printed it. The lenders who had attended Legacy Night filed claims against the only property he actually owned. He lost the orchard, the title, and the story that he had earned either one. That was enough. In April, the oldest cherry trees bloomed white. I stood beneath them with the first ledger my mother kept for Lawson Ridge. It had been inside one of the boxes recovered from Evan's storage unit. Her handwriting filled the margins. Fuel totals, weather notes, workers' birthdays, the weeks my father had forgotten to pay somebody. On the last page, she had drawn a rough map of the North Rose and written 2 words beside a crooked square: Mara's trees. She had planted them the year I was born. I kept my job in Chicago. Lawson Ridge hired Rosa Alvarez, who had managed Harvest Crews for 18 years, as president. Ownership did not require me to become trapped by the place that had trapped my mother. It required me to stop pretending it had built itself. A new line appeared beneath the Lawson Ridge sign that spring, founded by Elaine Lawson. Ben brought coffee while Scout ran ahead of us between the rows. He had learned to turn his head before chasing anything on his blind side. He was clumsy only when he forgot he had survived. His old camera hung from a nail in my mother's restored workroom. Scout disappeared into a cloud of fallen petals, then raced back when I called. For once, nothing had to record him to prove he had been there.